Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another reading. Happy Sunday for those who are looking at this reading as it comes out. We recently celebrated at the beginning of this week a full moon in the sign of Pisces. And so, what does a full moon represent? A full moon basically represents when a cycle, an energetic cycle, has been completed. But as the light of the moon is in full bloom, essentially what happens is that the light of the moon begins to shed light on various aspects of ourselves. So things that are hidden deep beneath the surface are brought up so that we can deal with them, and we can essentially figure out certain aspects of us that are blocking us. And this is basically what shadow work is about. Many of you might have heard what shadow work is, some of you might not have. And essentially, shadow work is the concept of looking into ourselves to better comprehend who we are and to highlight the aspects of ourselves that we are not so comfortable with, and the aspects of ourselves that maybe are limiting us. So it's just important that we remember that all of us have been exposed to some kind of trauma or another. And again, trauma, when I talk about trauma, I'm not necessarily talking about, trauma such as being traumatized by having a head injury or getting caught in a horrific accident. I'm talking about emotional trauma, because each and every one of us has experienced emotional trauma. And essentially, when we experience emotional trauma, because the mind, body, and emotions all work together. So when emotionally we are being traumatized, and there maybe we experience some kind of event and we don't know how to deal with our feelings about this event that's taking place. And if we don't know how to deal with our feelings, because unfortunately most of us kind of bottle them up and push them down and pretend they're not there, sweep them under the rug and say, I'm going to deal with these later, because unfortunately society and our world hasn't taught us how to deal with our emotions, hasn't taught us how to fully process when negative situations happen in our life. So when we're constantly being exposed to this kind of emotional trauma, and this can be as minor or as major as possible, but even the trauma that we experience as children, when we're going through the world, and as children we express our emotions and we express the way we feel, because this is just the way we express things as children, as we're learning how to be in and of this world. But it takes something as simple as, one day you could have been excited and telling something to your mother, and maybe you were shouting in your joy and excitement, and your mother was on the phone, and maybe she snapped at you and said, Shh, go away. I don't have time for you right now. And just that, because remember how our brains are developed when we're younger. Well, they're not fully developed. So certain things that might seem minor as adults are actually impacting us greatly when we're children. And so essentially, when we experience trauma, this affects our nervous system. And our nervous system is essentially what is controlling everything within our body. It's the electromagnetic signals that are sent from the brain into the nervous system. And this is how I'm able to move my hand, because my brain is telling my nervous system to activate the nerve that is connected to my hand. But essentially, if we have a lot of trauma that we haven't dealt with and we've bottled up, this becomes trapped somewhere within our body, affecting us. Over time, when there are so many trapped emotions inside of us, what happens is that the signals from our brain to the different parts of our body might not work as quickly. I give you an example. If I tell you to feel the toenail on your right baby toe, how many of you can actually feel it? If you can't feel it instantaneously and you can't connect with that part of your body instantaneously, then it means that there is a blockage somewhere between your brain and the nerve connected to your baby toe, which is not allowing you to actively feel your baby toe. And the reason why this happens is because when we get trauma and bottled up emotions trapped inside of us, because, well, they have to go somewhere, even if we pretend that they're not there, they're actively affecting us, and they're affecting the chemical makeup of our brain as well. This is why people end up being in depression or dealing with things like anxiety. So it's important to understand here that everyone in the world has experienced emotional trauma and is continuing to experience emotional trauma. And that is because the system that we live in does not necessarily want us to be emotional beings. And essentially, anyone who expresses their thoughts and their feelings are coined emotional. And this happens especially for women. And well, maybe, and the reason why this happens mainly for women is because women are just more naturally geared to be in tune with their emotions. And emotions are not something negative that we need to look at, because our emotions are what allow us to feel things. If we want to be more connected to our intuition and our creativity, we have to be in touch with our emotions. If you look at any superhero movie, basically their powers are always connected to their emotions. So start paying attention to your emotions. And why am I talking so much about emotions? Well, because of this full moon that we had in Pisces. So, first of all, the full moon actively activates our emotions. And I'm sure many of you have heard about how on full moons, animals start behaving strangely. They even say that crime goes up because the moon, the full moon, would shed light on these unprocessed aspects, on these unprocessed emotions that are still sitting somewhere within our mind or within our body, and are affecting not only the way we perceive the world, it's also affecting our beliefs, which affects our thoughts, which affects our actions. So, what if I told you that your present moment thoughts and actions are being driven by emotions that you didn't allow yourself to process, that occurred way back when? So the Piscean full moon, because Pisces is a deeply emotional sign, and Pisces is actually the ending sign of the zodiac. So by the time we reach Pisces, it means that a whole energetic loop, a whole astrological cycle has been completed. And so Pisces is the fish, swimming in opposite directions, because Pisces is able to be fully aware of their emotions, both the negative and the positive. This is the aspects of yin and yang also. Realizing that negative and positive emotions, or should I say, negative emotions are not bad. They're just a part of the emotions that we feel on the human spectrum. And if we didn't feel anger sometimes, then maybe sometimes we wouldn't have drive to do the things that we need to do. So every single emotion is important. Every single emotion is a part of the human experience. So as we experience this full moon, you might have experienced a lot of different emotions coming to the surface. You might have felt emotions from, back in the past, things that were coming up from childhood, things that happened last week, things that happened last month, just emotions that are bubbling to the surface. And why are these emotions coming up? Well, essentially, they're coming up to let you know that your body, your mind are ready to release these, because these emotions that remain unprocessed are actually just causing issues in your life. So pay attention to what emotions have been bubbling to the surface for you recently. And how do you normally deal with your emotions? Do you kind of just sweep them under the rug and pretend they're not there and say, okay, hopefully they'll go away because I ignore them? Well, I can tell you this, beautiful souls, that I used to be one of those people. It used to be impossible for me to deal with my emotions. I was like a robot. It was just easier for me to pretend that I wasn't feeling anything at all, because I just didn't know how to deal with this. And unfortunately, most of us don't know how to deal with this because we weren't taught. But essentially, feeling our feelings, as terrible as they make us feel within our body, eventually, when we feel them, we can let go of them and they can move through us. But we have to take the time to honor and appreciate our emotions, because, for example, I don't know why the emotion of grief is coming to the surface. And grief is a very interesting emotion that many of us don't fully understand. But grief can be experienced due to many different things. And most of us believe that grief can only be experienced when we experience the death of a loved one. But actually, grief can be experienced, whenever there is loss. So this could be loss of a romantic partner, loss of a job, loss of a certain financial situation, loss of a friend, loss of a house, loss of anything can make us experience grief. Now, there are different layers and there are different intensities of grief, but nonetheless, grief, if we don't experience our grief and if we don't honor that we have lost something and take the time to grieve the thing that we have lost, then we will be able to move on. Because essentially what happens is when we feel our emotions, and to explain this better, emotions are energy in motion. So when we feel our emotions, this is energy that is moving through our body. And when we allow ourselves to feel these emotions, then essentially that energy will move through us and eventually subside. But if we block them from moving through us, then they get blocked and we actually feel them way more intensely than we need to. So pay attention to the emotions that you have been blocking. Pay attention to the emotions that you have been ignoring. Pay attention to the traumas that you experienced in childhood, the traumas that you've experienced all through life. And no, not these big, big traumas, but these minor emotional traumas that have affected the way you think, that have affected the way you see yourself, that have affected your ability to even love yourself and be kind to yourself. And most people will have extremely negative self dialogue. Well, when you speak to yourself horribly all the time, well, eventually you're going to start to make yourself feel horrible. So the key of the full moons is always to help us identify the aspects of our lives that are no longer serving us, because most of us develop certain coping mechanisms because we weren't able to deal with those emotions at those time. But now, as we become stronger and we grow in our abilities to love ourselves and to be kind to ourselves, then it becomes easier to deal with those emotions. And the way to deal with those emotions is simply taking responsibility, or should I say, accepting that you are feeling the way you're feeling. And rather than talking to yourself and making yourself feel even shittier about it, just soothe yourself the way you would a child. Think about when a child, you know, when something happens to a child and the child is crying, you're not going to go and start screaming at that child. You're going to want to take that child in your arms and rub their back and kiss their head and say, it's okay, it's okay, you're going to feel better. So essentially, what you need to learn to start doing is to be more soothing and loving to yourself when you experience negative emotions bubbling up, and ask yourself how you want to respond to this situation. Because most of us are stuck in fight or flight, which means that we react to things as soon as they come up, but we don't realize that sometimes we don't want to sort of react in the way we do. I mean, how many times has something happened and you'll maybe scream at that person, but then you'll go away and you'll start feeling bad because you bit that person's head off. So this is how you can know if you are stuck in fight or flight, because you have unprocessed emotions that are causing you to feel stress within your mind or your body. So start paying attention to how you speak to yourself. And interestingly, this is how we can move into the first card, because the first card that we have here is Inner Temple. Tune into the portal of your heart. And I feel like, the imageries on this card is always so powerful. So, they talk about our bodies being our temples, but our bodies are essentially being driven by our mind. So, and our minds, which are something that we cannot tangibly touch, something that is really unseen, what is controlling your physical vessel. So the sooner that you get more aware of your mind and how this is blocking you from tuning into your heart, then you will start to realize that the way that mental health is so important. And mental health simply means being aware of the general state of being of our mind. So our minds should not be controlling us. We should be the ones controlling our minds. But most of us tend to have incessant mental chatter, all those voices going on inside your head, which generally are talking negative things to you, or generally not having the best of intentions if we are not aware of our minds. So it's important for you to start paying attention to what your mind is doing when you're not actively using it. When you're sort of in autopilot mode, then where does your mind wander off to? And if your mind is wandering off to negative places, then this is having a negative impact on your body. Because essentially, we are constantly looking at the negative things that are going on in our world, because this is how the system has programmed us to look at. And if you're interested in understanding more about how the system works, and I invite you to check out my latest podcast episode that dives deeper into this, that will help you to understand why it seems that we are all living in a world where we all seem unsafe to tune into our hearts. We all feel unsafe to really listen to what our hearts are saying. And most of us get stuck in our minds because we have been programmed to look at things in such a logical, rational way. But yet, our heart, being in our heart means being in our feelings. We have to be able to, we when most people ask questions and they'll say, I will always respond, well, what does your heart feel? Because the heart is always the best response. When we are following our heart, then we will never feel like we have made the wrong decisions because we will always feel good. And they say that the heart is actually way more intelligent than the brain, and that there is a brain in and of itself within the heart. So when you start to tune into the portal of your heart and start to do the things that make you feel good, because remember, every single decision that we're making in life is because we either want to feel something or not feel something. And when you break up all of the human emotions into, you can break them up into two categories. So there are those emotions that are of love, so which is everything to do with peace and joy and happiness and fulfillment. And these are things that make us feel good in our body. We feel good in our heart. And then there are emotions that are linked to fear, all the emotions that we feel because we are in fear: pain, anxiety, depression, stress, overwhelm, all those emotions that don't make us feel so good in our body. So when we start to tune into the portal of our heart, we will more easily start being aware of how we feel and making decisions that make us feel good within our heart and good within our body. So now more than ever, we are really being asked to cultivate our inner temple. And again, coming back to this full moon in Pisces, because Pisces is one of the most spiritual signs of the zodiac. And what does spirituality mean? Spirituality means essentially being in tune with your mind, body, and emotions, and really feeling through your heart and living from a place where you are not being a slave to the system, but whereas you are doing the things that make you feel good in your life. So the next card we have here is Soul Family. Yes, call in your tribe. You don't have to do it alone. We are all going through intense times of healing. And this is why everything in the world might be feeling a little bit chaotic, because not only are we individually, well, at least those of us who are feeling called to go inwards and to heal, and not only healing things from this lifetime, but also healing things from our ancestral line. So if there was trauma if our ancestors experienced trauma, well, that trauma, unless it was processed and dealt with, was actually handed down to us and was encoded within our DNA and cellular structure. So we are being called to heal these aspects of us. And it's so interesting because until we heal, we don't really know what we are capable of. We don't even know what possibilities are available to us, because we have basically been tuning off or tuning out those parts of ourselves because they were traumatized. And unfortunately, most of us experience trauma from childhood when people deflect their own insecurities upon us and say, no, 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 that's not possible, that's not possible. And basically, because people, misery loves company. So if someone is misery and down in the dumps and someone else is there and is joyful and happy, well, most people will want that person who is joyful and happy to feel the pain that they are feeling. And this is maybe not being done consciously, but this is unfortunately what most of us do. So Soul Family is realizing that you are not alone on this journey, right? And it's so interesting here, the concepts of family, because in my journey, I have experienced rejection from pretty much my entire family, and this was already the case when I was a child. And so the family who I consider family today are pretty much not blood related. And the family you choose is somehow so much more important than the family that we are born into. And it's realizing that family can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, because family And when I talk about here calling your tribe, you don't have to do it alone. And really, again, because we were experiencing a very spiritual full moon, I think about family, even departed loved ones. You know, family is not always the family who are in a human vessel. You know, I consider my dogs to be family. And interestingly enough, my dogs have brought me some of the most amount of healing in my life. So, it's realizing who do you want to surround yourself with as you go through this process of healing. Who do you want to surround yourself with? Who do you want to call upon? Because speaking to, departed loved ones is, and this can even be ancestors, most of us have the ability to commune with the spirit world, but we don't trust ourselves and we don't believe that because essentially we dumb ourselves down and we tune out to those parts of ourselves because society has made us really tune out to our emotions. And the more we can be in our emotions, the more we start to activate our right brain, which is the brain that is connected to our intuition, connected to our sixth sense, connected to our creativity, connected to our ability to manifest, connected to our ability to be imaginative and to go back to that, playful childhood curiosity in which we used to look at the world in such awe and be like, oh, well, at least I used to remember how I couldn't wait to be an adult because I would be able to go out into the world and do all kinds of cool things. So, yes, go back towards your childhood self and let your inner child come out and play. Let your inner child come out and rediscover the world. And the next card we have is Mirror. Who or what is triggering you? Yes, because this full moon was, and look at the card here, it's all about water. And water really shows us. Water is all about the emotions. And water, with this full moon, especially in Pisces, very much bringing out our emotions, essentially was highlighting the things that still trigger us. And what are triggers? Well, triggers are situations, things that people might say, certain thoughts that we might have, certain beliefs that we might have that will make us start to feel some kind of way, something that will trigger your anxiety, something that will trigger a certain, things that will trigger fear for you, things that will trigger any of those lower vibrational emotions that are going to want to make you close up and not be in your heart and not express yourself and not share, the best aspects of yourself. So yes, who or what is triggering you? And it's funny because when I look at the who and then I see the soul family card, but I see the family part only, and this makes me, think about how most of us are triggered by our family. And, essentially, we're soul beings having a human experience. And we chose to come, our souls chose to come and have this experience. They came here because they wanted to come and embody and experience certain things. But we tend to be, whenever we incarnate, we tend to be incarnated within a similar pod. And that pod is our family because we have experienced many past experiences and past relationships. And so, your father in this life could have been your sibling in a past life, and your mother in this life could have been your husband in your past life, and so on and so forth. So we come in with the same group of souls who essentially are here to help us wake up and to help us remember and to help us pinpoint our triggers so that we can grow and we can expand and we can elevate and we can become a better version of ourselves. So who or what is triggering you? What is triggering you to stay in those fear-based emotions and not allowing you to move into those love-based emotions? Because when we're in those love-based emotions, then we're no longer experiencing and perceiving the world through a lens of survival. We're now perceiving and looking at the world through a lens of thriving. So the next card that we have is Collaborate with the Aquarius card. And so interestingly, they talk about us being in the age of Aquarius. And, it's interesting because the numerology here is an 11, which I always look at being sort of the two pillars to a portal, to a gateway. So as we enter the age of Aquarius, we're very much entering into a portal. And they say that we are moving out of the age of deep trauma, moving into an age of information. And they say that information is power. Well, yes, information can come through many different formats. So our emotions are a certain type of information that is relaying to us that something that we are feeling a certain way, and that is going to lead us to take certain decisions or certain actions. So now, as we're in the age of Aquarius, the archetype of Aquarius, when you look at it, is really about higher mind, higher thinking. It is deep intelligence, and it is about using that intelligence to elevate the collective. So, to make things better, to come up with unique, creative ways in which we can start to improve the experience for the many. So as we move into this age of Aquarius and more information is coming to light, and many of us are being bombarded with so much information that it's almost hard to distinguish now what is true and what is not true. But this is why we are being asked to figure out for ourselves through our heart what is our truth. And by collaborating, and really the first thing that comes to mind is co-creating and collaborating with the spirit world, co-creating and collaborating with your higher self, your soul self, your spirit, but also with God, with the universe, with the higher powers, with, the one divine creator, whatever it is that you want to call it, and co-creating with the spirit realm. Because the spirit realm, remembering that, you know, there are multiple different dimensions, and even as human beings we are all multifaceted and exist on multiple dimensions. Just like your mind can travel to other worlds, when we daydream we're traveling to another dimension, because we're not in this reality here. When we're dreaming at night, we move into another dimension. But essentially, again, I always look at it as a pillar, with the material earth physical dimension being down here at the bottom, and there are all these other dimensions up above. But for example, what creates my body to move? It's first a thought. That thought is not in this current dimension, it is existing in a non-tangible dimension, but that is what is activating my physical body. So if you want to change your life, the best way to change your life and to create the life that you desire is essentially to figure out in your mind and in your emotions what it is that you desire, so that those desires and those thoughts can ignite you to take the actions that it is that need to be taken in order for you to get to where it is that you desire. So when this is why they say mind over matter, and everything is about mindset. And if you look at successful people, the only reason that they are successful is because they have a success mindset. They have a mindset where it is about improving themselves, and it is about moving forward, and it is about doing the best that they can. But if you show up every day and say, basically want to do the least amount possible and don't really want to put in any effort or any energy, well, then you're obviously not going to get anywhere that it is that you want to get. There is always energy, intention, and effort that needs to be taken in order to get wherever it is that we are going. So start to pay attention to your mind. What kind of information are you feeding your mind? What kind of things are you putting into your mind? Because every kind of content that we consume is affecting our mind. It's affecting our beliefs, it's affecting our thoughts, and therefore affecting our emotions and also our actions. So start to pay attention to how you are collaborating with those around you. When people offer you help, are you able to receive? When you get inspired ideas, do you take action on them? Are you taking action on the ideas that are coming in? Because this is a way for the spirit world to bring you closer to whatever it is that you desire. But if you are not able to take the action, then unfortunately you will not get there. And interestingly enough, so the next card that we have is a 2. So the 11 brings down to a 2, which is all about collaboration. And the 2 is really the archetype of the 2 is the partnership card. It's there's 1, which is me, and 2 is now, at least there is more than the 1. So working with others. But the Taurus card, so while Aquarius is very much about the mind, Taurus is very much about earth. It's very much about grounding. It's very much about doing things in this physical reality. I'm just going to show you the imagery here because I just love these cards. They're so beautiful. And really, so Taurus, the message here is cultivate. Yes, to collaborate, this takes cultivation. Not all of us are great um at teamwork. I used to be one of those people. I used to like to do everything on my own, and I used to be so controlling. And this was just one of my coping mechanisms, to be in control, because when I wasn't able to be in control in my childhood, then as I grew older, I felt like the only way to make me feel safe was to be in control of everything. And the thing is, until we start to go looking for these things, we don't even realize that we're doing them. So it takes a little bit of effort to cultivate this new way of shaping our mind into a mindset for success, shaping our mind, sorry, to work for us and to bring us closer to success. So if our mind is constantly running away and thinking about all the worst case possible scenarios that could be happening, then that is definitely not gearing us towards success. If we look to the future and we look at all the possibilities that could possibly happen if we take these actions, then we're going to start to move through the world in a different way. So start cultivating the way you want to move through the way. Start paying attention to where you're not taking action. And again, then here we move on to the 10, which is Capricorn and achieve. Again, more earth energy here. But interestingly enough, is that the archetype of Capricorn is actually one of the most spiritual in terms of the earth signs, because so Capricorn is represented by the goats. And interestingly enough, when you look at, Capricorn, the symbol of Capricorn, it's actually like part goat, part fish, I think, or part like has like a mermaidy looking tail. And so, as much as it's kind of like a mythical creature, but then I also think what comes to mind is, have you ever seen these goats that will basically be hanging out on these like almost like straight edge walls, and they'll be able to move up these like really tiny, and like it's almost like a wall, and these goats are just sort of like hanging out there on the side of this wall, and you're just kind of like, what on earth are you doing there, and how did you get there? Because most people think that goats are quite stupid animals, but actually they're very, very intelligent when you pay attention to them. And so these goats will continue going regardless, they somehow move past all fear, and they'll just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going until they eventually get to where they need to go. So this is the kind of energy that you need to bring into your life in order to achieve whatever it is that you wish to succeed and achieve. Because if you're not willing to keep going, nothing happens overnight. Every single success story that exists in this world only exists because these people had this ability to keep going despite all the failures, despite all the challenges, despite people maybe saying that they were crazy and completely nuts. But these people went against everyone and everything and believed in themselves and believed that they would achieve what they had set out to achieve, until eventually they did. So where are you not fully committed to your success? Because if you're not fully committed to your success, then unfortunately you probably won't reach them. And then the next card we have is the Sun, and interestingly it brings me down to the pile just below, where also the Sun. So two Sun cards that came out here from two different decks, really bringing in that. And the first thing that I think about when I see this is the solar plexus. And essentially, we are all going through deep solar plexus activations, and our solar plexus is really the seat of our will. It is our ability to take action. If we have no will, then it's very difficult for us to follow through with things. It's very difficult for us to take decisions and to stick to them. And now what happens is our will can be slowly diminished. Well, again, coming back to the system highly diminishes our will, because it makes us really believe that we are not worthy and that we don't have what it takes to succeed, or that it's very difficult for us to succeed in life. But interestingly enough, the numerology on both cards is we have a 9 on the top one and an 8 on the bottom one. So the 9 is about the completion of cycles, and the 8 is about abundance. And abundance can come in many different ways, but it is about being a powerhouse, someone who has the ability to continue going and holds authority. So essentially, we are being asked to tune into our will. And this kind of goes hand in hand with last week's reading, which was all about, being asked to take a divinely guided chance. Now, we can only take chances and we can only take risks if we are following, if we have willpower, and if we can find the energy within us to take those steps, coming back to that Capricorn card. But again, also what is happening, interestingly enough, is that there are major changes that are happening with our sun. There are major changes that are happening not only on Earth, but in the entire galaxies, throughout the entire cosmos. And I don't know if some of you might have noticed, but nowadays the sun is a more whitish color, whereas before it used to be a yellow color. And that is because our sun is actually heating up. Our sun is starting to emit high levels of radiation, which is why, many people in the world who lack melanin are having to keep out of the sun because more and more people are getting burnt by the sun. So, on another level, why is the sun is emitting major solar flares, which has even been talked about by NASA if you want to go and research this, but also that the sun is emitting high levels of radiation, which is why we're seeing a lot of these forest fires happening around the world. But also, what this is doing to us as humans is that dormant strands of our DNA are literally being activated. Now, I'm not sure if you are familiar with DNA, and there is something that scientists have termed junk DNA, which is basically like 90% of our DNA, which they can't seem to figure out where it came from. Well, it's because it isn't from this world. Beautiful souls, most people don't realize that we as human beings are made up of multiple strands of DNA that come from multiple different beings, which is why as human beings, well, our DNA is actually made up of multiple different things. But I'm not going to get into that here. You can go and do some research into this, or I'll probably have a podcast episode about this in the near future. But essentially, you are being asked to tap into your sun, to tap into your source, because the sun is really the source of power and life. If there is no sun, well, there is nothing really out there. And so, also, it's important for you to go and spend some time in the sun. It's important for you to receive these light codes that are coming down from our great celestial being that are helping us to evolve and helping not only us to evolve, but all the species on this planet are literally going through evolution. There are more interesting species that are being discovered every single day, where scientists have no idea where these come from. So there are definitely interesting things happening at this time. But if you have been in a state of hibernation, or you have been in a state of self isolation, which many of us have been in as we are going through these upgrades, it is important for you to protect your energy. But as the double sun card comes out here, it is because you have slowly been building your light, and you are now being asked to bring it out and to share it with the world, because each and every one of us has light inside of us, and each and every one of us has a certain vibrational frequency to our light. And every single one of us has a purpose to accomplish with our light. And most of it is just to be here and to share our light in whatever way feels good to our heart. So start thinking about the things that bring you joy, because when you are in joy and when you are in happiness and when you are feeling love and you are feeling all those good feelings, then you emit a certain vibrational frequency which helps to uplift others, which is why we see so often when, you can see somebody laughing, have no idea why they're laughing, and suddenly you'll be laughing as well, because joy is infectious, and the good kind of infectious. So share your light. It is so important now more than ever. Then the next card we have here is Gang Gang Sarah Resistance. This is from the African Goddesses card deck, which, just look at this imagery. such beautiful imagery. And basically, yes, this is what is happening. Whether you are a man or a woman watching this reading, remember, we all have masculine and feminine energies inside of us. We all have, this is part of the system we live in, where everything exists in duality, in balance. One cannot exist without the other. So yes, we are all being asked to identify where we are still in resistance, where we are resisting the changes that are occurring, because the more we resist the change, essentially the more painful and uncomfortable the change is. The more we surrender and accept that these changes are happening, whether we like it or not, and the more we can let go of these heavy, dense emotions that are stopping us from shifting with these energies, then we will continue to be in resistance and we will no longer be in flow. And the numerology here is 22, and 22 is a master number, which is also the number of the master builder. But it also has the 4. But in order to build anything, you need to have a solid, strong foundation. Definitely not a rocky one. So, where is your foundation rocky? Where are you not stable? Because in order to build and to achieve whatever it is that you are looking to achieve here, it is important that you have a strong foundation. Wherever there is resistance, wherever you do not believe that you can gain success and be successful, those are your indications of where you need to do your shadow work, where you need to start unpacking why you believe that you are not able to achieve, why you cannot reach success. Then the next card we have here is Sarah La Kali, which is divine lineage. Yes, beautiful souls, if you are here, it means that you are connected to a divine lineage. And the numerology here is a 6. 6 is all about harmony. 6 is all about love. 6 is all, and if you look at her, she looks very angelic here with her, her halo up here, her crown. And she's kind of like in prayer. And this is because you belong to a divine lineage. You belong to a lineage that needed to, I don't know why I wanted to say activate, to incarnate, thank you, at this time, to share your divine knowledge, because there is divine knowledge that is running through your DNA, and you might not be fully aware of this, but until you go looking for it, it's very interesting. You don't know what you don't know, and until you start asking yourself what you don't know, you will never know what you don't know. Just like when I started asking, I didn't know anything about this, and when I started asking what I didn't know about myself, well, I was led to discover that I come from a lineage, also a divine lineage, where for many lifetimes before, I had ancestors on both sides of my lineage that were connected to the spirit world in some way or another. So start to realize that there are no mistakes, that our one divine creator, I like to refer to it as the universe, or God, but not the God that we talk about in church or the Bible. I don't want to confuse spirituality with religion here, but really it is the divine creator. And we are all part of the divine creator. We are all, they say that we were created in the image of the gods, which means that we are just a part of God manifested in another way. It is just God's ability to experience all that is. The only way that God can be all present, all omniscient, is by having so many different perspectives all at once, which happens through every single being that is in existence on this planet at this time. And this is not only the humans, I'm also referring to the plant world and the animal world. So, yeah, start paying attention and discovering what is your divine lineage. Wild woman, yes, as we go through these major changes, what is happening is that feminine energy is starting to rise once again, and not to be confused with men versus women, not at all. We men and women are just as important. There is not one sex that is more important than the other. We all have our parts to play, and the sooner we can realize that when we are able to come into a state of balance and harmony, where everyone has their role and everyone has their place, then things will begin to shift. But now, when I am talking to women specifically, because we are living in a patriarchal system, is that women have been All women were wild once upon a time, and we were all tamed. Feminine energy was tamed so that she could not be fully present in this world. And the result of that is that we have all dumbed ourselves down and not allowed to be in our full power, which is why we have so many women trying to be men. But that is not the way it is supposed to be. We are all supposed to be divinely connected to our feminine energy and not feel fear. And so, the programming that has existed for women for so long is just to be there to look pretty, And when I think about in ancient times when women were used just literally to be married off to men, to appease men from going into war, well, we're experiencing the consequences of how women have not allowed to be in their power. But this wild woman energy is also very present in men. If men are not able to be fully connected to their feminine energies, then they are also being in fear. And it is important for men to be able to tune into their feminine energies, just as it is important for women to tune into their masculine energies. But it is important to be balanced between the two and not overly dominant on one side rather than the other. And again, we have another 8 card, which is all related to that solar plexus success energy. Now, moving into the messages from the angels. So many shifts happening at this time. So the first card that we have from the angelic realm is unlimited ideas. Your mind is one with God's infinite mind. Therefore, you have complete access to unlimited ideas, guaranteed to bring blessings. All you need to do is take divinely guided action to allow these ideas to come to fruition. It's very important because this almost feels like a continuation of last week's reading. So yes, your mind, remember, the mind is non-tangible. The mind is something that it exists that we cannot touch, but we have the ability to tune in to God's infinite mind. This is where we go to get ideas. This is where we go to get creative ideas. This is why when ideas come to you and you don't take action, well, this is God saying, hey, I'm literally here to help you, but you're ignoring the messages that I'm sending you. So really, we are being asked to open up to the subtle messages that are coming into us every single day, but that we miss because we're too busy worrying about things that aren't really that important. We're too busy worrying about what if scenarios that are most likely never going to happen. So yes, tune into God's infinite mind. You have access to unlimited ideas guaranteed to bring blessings. Take action on those ideas. People who have so many ideas and do nothing with them, well, again, you're not bringing yourself any closer to success. So moving on, it is safe for you to receive. Yes, many of us who are givers, it is because we are fearful of receiving. The programming in the system has made us think that we always need to be giving, always giving, feeding the system. It seems that if we are taking, then we are selfish. But no, beautiful souls, we have to receive as much as we give. Otherwise, there is no balance. Remember, everything is about balance. So the more you allow yourself to receive, the more resources you have available to share with others. Yes, if you have great ideas that come in, but you hold on to those ideas and you don't share them with anyone, then you're not helping yourself and you're not helping anyone else. So open your arms to receive and be a conduit for good coming to you and through you as it blesses the world. Yes, beautiful souls, the more we receive, the more we have to give. It's always the analogy of the cup. If your cup is half empty, how can you give to others? You have to be able to keep filling up your cup until you have enough to give to others as well. So organize for success is the next card. Do not let the word organize intimidate you, as it is simply a way for you to ensure clarity of purpose. Interestingly enough, we are in Virgo season. So, Virgo season, the energies present at this time are all about organization. It's all about the small little habits that we do every day that bring us closer to success. As I said, success doesn't happen overnight. It is all these small little things that we do that brings us closer to success. So it's think about, the daily habits that you have. Are these habits actually bringing you closer to success, or are they taking you further away? So, organizing your thoughts, your reports, your living and workspace, and your finances will help you know and plan your next action steps. Yes, when you have a plan and you break this plan down, it makes it so much easier for you to succeed and achieve whatever it is that you want. If you're just moving around in the dark hoping that you'll get there, well, you're probably not likely to get there, because a plan is very necessary. Just like God had a plan when, he was creating the earth. There is always a plan. So there is also a divine plan. And last of all, we have God is your source. And interestingly enough, this card falls underneath the two sun cards where it says source. Yes, the sun is our source. And in ancient Egypt, they worshipped the sun because they understood that everything came from the sun. The sun gives us life. I mean, maybe not everybody enjoys the sun as much as I do, but the sun definitely makes us feel better than the cold. So even if you're in the cold, doesn't the cold feel so much better when there is sun? So God is your source. Sun is your source. Everything you need is supplied by the infinite source of God. And your faith opens the doorway to receive. Yes, if you believe that you are worthy of receiving, then you will receive. In God, there is no lack or limitation. Rather, there is plenty of abundance for all to share. Yes, beautiful souls. We live in a system that keeps telling us that we need to be living in lack mentality, that there isn't enough for everyone. There is more than enough for everyone. And this is, again, when we look to nature, nature continues to provide and has provided for millions of years everything that beings on this planet have needed to survive. So, if we start being more respectful of our beloved Mother Nature, then we will realize that there is nothing to lack, that we will always have what we need. And once we start realizing that we can always create what we need when we work in co creation with nature, then we will never lack anything and we will always be able to thrive. So, beautiful souls, this has been a bit of a long one. I'm sending you much love and light. Please share with me in the comments down below if this message is resonating for you. And again, if you have made it up to this part of the reading, congratulations, you are that much closer to attaining the success that you desire. So much love to you, and I'll see you soon.